guys, welcome back to Chapter in Ash. I am Ash. You are here and I am pumped. I'm sending some love, some positive vibes your way, especially if you need them out there today. Today I want to talk about how and why I've read thousands of books, right? This is not a speed reading lecture on how to read more books, but I guess there will be a few tips, if you call them that, along the way. But already here on the channel, I've uploaded, 6 or 7 videos so far, and I've gotten a few comments like, dude, how do you, people know I'm busy, especially if you know me from my other YouTube channels. I'm busy. I own a company. I upload to other YouTube channels. I am a dad who, my son is my life. So how do I have time to read all these books, right? Like, people in the comments are like, dude, you really read all these books too? So I wanted to tell you a little bit about me, about how I cultivated this love of reading, love of books, and how I've read so many, why I've read so many, and why I still read today, and how I consume books out there. And I'd love to hear about you guys as well. So let's start out back in my youth, little Ashy Poo, right? Honestly, my parents always stressed. I'm sure a lot of you guys might be in the same boats too, but man, my parents were pretty strict. I grew up in a strict household, and almost everything I felt like, at least growing up, was off limits, right? Had very, very strong restrictions on television time, screen time, video games, which I loved, right, growing up. And during the days, on the weekends in the summer, my mom would make me go outside and play during the daylight hours. I couldn't even go inside. Going inside was like, you had to pee, you had to use the bathroom, but that was about it, right? Or otherwise get back out there. But there was one exception to that rule, right? I was allowed to go inside if I was reading, right? I grew up in a pretty poor household as well, right? But there's one thing my parents would always buy me. There was just one thing, and that was a book, a new book. As long as I read it, I could just keep getting new books, right? So from a young age, my mom would read to me, and I absolutely loved it. Some of my best memories were my mom reading to me, first baby books and then chapter books, and then my teachers reading to me too was my favorite memories that I have, especially as I got to 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, around those time periods. Some of my favorite and most memorable books come from that time period. But really, as a young boy, I used to sit all day and just consume these books. I love these fantasy series in my coming of age years, right? I'm talking Red Wall and Dragonlance, Magic the Gathering novels, novels like that. I really dug my fantasy, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, etc. So I got hooked. Going through high school, I kind of got hooked on the classics as well. So I always loved reading, right? Always loved reading, but my mom really instilled it in me that reading was not just good, but it's going to almost make you a genius. There was this strong correlation, and there are some scientific correlations to reading, obviously, and a lot of different things, mental health and even longevity, which we'll talk about in a moment here. But my mom, you would have thought that it was a cure for every disease known to man, and will make you a brilliant Einstein, the way that she held, or the reverence that she had to reading, right? So that's really stayed with me in a big way into my adulthood. So anyway, moving on in my life here to my very early 20s, I got a job at the post office, right? And I was there for 14 years. This is how I've read so many books, right? And when I say read, I use that term loosely. But listen, I've always loved being read to. I talked about my teachers. I talked about my mom. And I was working. I was always on the overtime list. I was always chugging away 6 days a week, 10 hours, sometimes more every single day. And I was on the road all by myself. So every day, I was listening to audiobooks for 8 to 10 hours. That's just during work hours. Sometimes I go to the gym and I listen, right? I drive to and from work and I'd be listening, right? So my world was, I had my real life, right? My friends, my family members, my job, whatever. And then I had these fantasy worlds or nonfiction, whatever I was reading, that was almost like an alternate life for me. And it gave me solace during times where I was down in life. It was really interesting, right? But you know how it is when you're really into a good book, it kind of stays with you. And then you get really almost depressed, a little upset when it ends, right? Those characters almost seem real. And for me, that's always given me a source of peace, strength. It's weird. It's hard to articulate. It sounds dumb that I'm saying it out loud, but it's always kind of run adjacent to my normal life, and that is my reading life in a weird way, if that makes any sense to anybody out there, right? So anyway, 14 years of audiobooks, right? I was busting out a couple books every single week, even longer ones. So that's how really, when I go back in my Audible and there's 1,000 books there, right? That's how I was able to make a channel like this, frankly, right? Because of my job at the time. Now, for the last 10 years, I quit. I retired from the post office, obviously early, and I started a YouTube career, and I started a company, and I went into the marketing space, and things really changed for me in my life. But the audio, right? That stayed with me. Every day, even though I'm super busy, I still go on like an hour and a half worth of walks, right? I rent out studio space, office space for my company, and I will just take any call that I can on the road, but also I'll take my long walks and I'll listen to audiobooks. I'll still go for, about an hour worth of driving to and for, picking up my son or going to the gym or whatever, every single day, and I'm still listening to audiobooks. It's just my favorite form of entertainment, right? But I still, and I always have, read hard copies of books as well. Now, I am a slow-ass reader. For someone who reads so many books, or consumes, let's say, so many books, right? I am a slow reader, but I think it's so unbelievably important, especially today, in today's age, to read physical books. Now, I only read physical books maybe on average 10, 15 minutes a night. That's it. But I think that alone is so important because you know what? When my son was born around a decade ago, when I was transitioning from the post office to YouTube and starting my company, I was so busy that I just dropped reading for about a year. And then when I picked it up again, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I was so damn distracted, digitally distracted. I blame my phone, my devices, and I'm not a Luddite here, but there's no doubt about it, man. From where smartphones started to where we are today, my attention span, something about my focus has really taken a hit. I'm sure you're in the same boat, if you care to admit it, but at least I'll just speak for myself. I felt it in a big way, and it took me months of reading for 10, 20, 30 minutes a night, to actually be able to reteach myself how to focus again. It was wild. So now I don't want to give that up. In a lot of ways, I feel like it's, similar to meditation, right? Meaning that you have to actually, exercise your focus in your brain. And when you read, it's slower. Especially, I prefer physical copies of books, right? Which is reading this book in the background earlier today. But I prefer physical copies because I don't need to look at another screen. And that's no hate to anybody out there. My day job is looking at a screen for 12 hours a day, So I don't need any more screen. But I feel like when you're reading, whether it's on a Kindle or a device or an actual physical copy of a book, I feel like your brain has to slow down. And that can be arduous, especially if you're not used to it. But I think it's so unbelievably healthy for you to do so. So listen, if you're not a big reader and you're somehow watching this video, I think that, listen, I'm a huge fan of audiobook. That also teaches you to focus, right? And it teaches you not to be distracted. And sometimes you'll have to rewind, but you'll get there. Just stick with it. Same thing with reading a hard copy of a book, but maybe in a different way. That's why I would encourage you to do what I do. I go with easy, short reads. I do a lot of horror because I feel like it's just easy page turners, maybe mystery novels, just something super simple and super short, right? Those are the books that I read hard copies of. Now, longer, big anthologies or series or more technical nonfiction, whatever it may be, more detail-oriented stuff, I go with Audible because I like when somebody's reading to me and I'm more acquainted with that, more comfortable with that, and I have a more refined focus on that. But anyway, that's my tactic. I do want to end this video by giving you guys, a little actual data in terms of, what are the real benefits? What are the real benefits of reading, genuinely today? So in terms of not just anecdotal BS, in terms of actual hard scientific peer-reviewed studies on the cognitive impacts on actually reading, again, whether that's your Kindle or your hard copy, I'm talking about reading every day, even if it's only 10 minutes, right? And I'll link, by the way, 5 of these studies in the description below if you guys want to take a deeper look. But reading activity reduces risk of cognitive decline in older adults, 65 or older. Reading for pleasure appears to be tied to longevity. Now, I don't know about correlation versus causation there, but there are definitely links there quite a bit. Now, number 3 is reading improves certain mental health, mood, and stress metrics. This is done by a really big study by Baylor College. And daily or regular reading trains cognitive functions, attention span, memory, and working memory, all of which I could certainly use boost to, which is another reason why I read. All right, guys, a little bit about me there, a little bit about, I'm not trying to freaking be your teacher here and tell you, go ahead and read every night here, but I do think that, you know, we're losing something as a society when we stop reading, and I think that we can gain a lot, both, you know, selfishly for ourselves in terms of our mental, depression, all that stuff, stave off some of those mental things that we want to avoid, obviously, right? And just for the pleasure of reading, right? Which is first and foremost, you know, I've had that since a little kid, and hopefully you guys do as well. I mean, hell, you're watching this video at the very end of it on a reading channel. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in on this one. Now I can always reference this video when someone asks in the comments, how the heck did you read so many books? Much love, guys. Thank you so much for all the support here on the channel, and as always, take care, guys.